Dear Jeff, as I begin to write this letter, I find myself overwhelmed with a swirl of emotions. Leaving you was not a decision I made lightly, and I hope you understand that it isn't about blame or resentment. It's about recognizing the changes within myself and the need to face them truthfully for both our sakes. Our time together has been filled with happiness, laughter, and countless shared moments that I will always hold dear. From the early stages of our relationship to building a life together, we've experienced both the highs and lows, weathering storms and celebrating victories side by side. However, somewhere along the way, I lost my sense of self amid the familiarity of our life together. I want you to know that this decision doesn't diminish your value or our love. It's about me needing to rediscover who I am outside of our relationship. I've spent so much time defining myself in relation to you that my own dreams and desires have been left unattended. Writing this letter is my way of being honest with both of us, because I couldn't bear to see the pain in your eyes or hear it in your voice as I try to explain my feelings. It wouldn't be fair to either of us to delay the inevitable, and I hope you can find it within yourself to understand. You deserve happiness and fulfillment in your life moving forward. You deserve someone who can love you fully, without hesitation or doubt. I hope one day we can reflect on our time together with appreciation for the lessons learned and memories created. Take care of yourself, Jeff. You'll always hold a special place in my heart. I realize what I'm saying might seem selfish, and perhaps it is, but that's why I've made this decision. I've found myself longing for new experiences, for the excitement of something different, and unfortunately, that's something our relationship can no longer offer. When we were younger, you were irresistible, the way you played guitar with Buddy and the band, rode your Harley in that leather jacket, your blonde hair flowing as we danced the night away, whether at a rock club or a ballroom. You made me feel alive. But over time, things changed. The band's gigs faded as you focused more on coaching soccer. The Harley sits unused in the garage under the kids' sports equipment. I can't keep up on the dance floor like I used to, even though you still have that beautiful hair. Now that the kids are grown, I no longer feel comfortable with the minivan life you've embraced. I want to assure you that I've remained faithful. You've always been the only man in my life, but I've been drawn to the idea of something new. Before I acted on those feelings, I felt it was right to end things with you because I couldn't bear to betray your trust. I've loved you too much for that. I've already spoken with Sam about handling our divorce. He's prepared the paperwork, and I've taken only my clothing and personal items. I've agreed to split my pension with you and share half of our debts, except the mortgage. That's only fair, considering I contributed to those debts. I want this to be as just as possible. Please grieve in your own way so that when we attend events for the kids, we can avoid unnecessary tension. I believe in fairness, so if you feel the need to respond, I promise I'll read your thoughts carefully and respect your feelings. With love, Ellen. I read the letter over and over, standing frozen in the kitchen where I found it. The tears hadn't come yet. I was too numb. There had been no signs, no expressions of dissatisfaction, no unmet desires, no arguments, and no hints of another man. We shared affection, kisses, smiles, all the signs of a couple planning a future together. In fact, I had spent the last year trying to rekindle our spark, now that our youngest was off to college. I bought jewelry, only to be scolded for spending too much. She preferred chocolate. I even stopped initiating intimacy, thinking it caused her stress. She said holding hands was enough. Maybe that was the clue, but I ignored it, thinking it was just part of aging. So there I stood, the last to know. I grabbed a beer and headed into the shower. After finishing one, I reached for two more, trailing water through the house without a care. I drank with purpose, hoping to numb the pain. The next morning, I woke with a pounding headache, lying on the basement floor. After the shower, I staggered upstairs, vomited everything I had consumed, crawled into bed, and cried. When I was 11, my grandmother passed away. At her wake, my grandpa pulled me aside and said, "You get 3 days to mourn a loss. Just as God resurrected the dead in 3 days, you can resurrect your life. Cry, scream, vent your frustrations. When you're old enough, have a drink, get into a good fight, pray, but after that, move on. Honor the dead by living." Grandpa's words hit home. I saw my wife's departure as the death of our marriage. I cried, drank heavily, punched holes in the sheetrock until my fists bled, and used furniture to vent my anger. I yelled, kicked, and barely ate, justifying that beer is made from grain, yeast, and water, and wine from fruit, condensed food groups in 2 bottles. I was on summer break when she left, the day after the school year ended, a calculated choice. By the following Tuesday, I had emerged from my grieving. The first thing I did was call my kids. Ellen had already informed them, and they had been trying desperately to reach me. I was too drunk to answer, but I assured them I was fine. I cleaned the house and arranged for my favorite charity to pick up a truckload of donations. I had no desire to hold on to relics from a failed marriage. I kept only the family heirloom furniture and boxed up photos for the kids. Everything else, useless knickknacks, went into the trash. Why would I care about Spanish pottery or brass cats from Portugal? In the following days, I made multiple trips to Home Depot, stocking up on flooring, carpet, paint, and sheetrock. My goal was clear: transform the house into my own. The pink and coral walls with frilly curtains were a thing of the past. I also met with Sam to finalize the divorce paperwork, which, since it was uncontested and involved only one lawyer, he said should be completed by the time school resumed. I sold the minivan and traded it in for a 1976 Triumph Spitfire convertible, something I had always dreamed of. It was British racing green with beige leather seats and shiny wire wheels. Clearing out the garage of all the unused junk made unpacking the Harley a breeze. But the most impactful choice I made was contacting Buddy. That call shifted my life as dramatically as my wife's departure letter had just days earlier. Within half an hour of sharing my situation, Buddy and the guys were at my door. Buddy had been my closest friend since 3rd grade. We started our band together, played sports, took the same classes, and even went on double dates. He had been my best man, and I was his. The breakdown of my marriage hit him hard, and he wouldn't let me go through it on my own. Our band had broken up years ago due to the demands of life, but our loyal fans hadn't forgotten us. When I mentioned Buddy and the boys, it wasn't just a small group of guys. We had played at numerous weddings, funerals, parties, and picnics, often for a discount or for free, as we valued the community that followed us from show to show. Good deeds have a way of coming back, and when word got out that I was renovating my house to truly make it my own, the generosity poured in. Over the next 2 weeks, painters, carpenters, masons, plumbers, every trade imaginable pitched in, transforming far more than just my walls. Within a month, my house had been completely revamped, inside and out. There's something about a bunch of guys working together that attracts the women in their lives. Soon, their wives and girlfriends started showing up at Project Jeff's house, overseeing the progress. Before long, they began bringing their single friends along, which we humorously dubbed Project Jeff's love life. Nobody was pushing for anything, and it was too early for that, but it was clear seeds were being planted. Before long, I was out dancing and socializing 2 or 3 nights a week. Barbecues and gatherings popped up spontaneously at my place, and I was never lacking for company. Though I wasn't ready for a new relationship before the divorce was finalized, Buddy floated the idea of reviving the band. In fact, he had already lined up gigs at clubs where we had old connections. Even before the new paint had fully dried on my walls, Buddy and I were back in action, headlining Friday nights at Jimmy's and performing Saturdays at a cozy downtown dance club. We even booked duo sets for Sunday afternoons at a popular waterfront seafood spot. It was like we'd never stopped playing together. We were all in similar phases of life, with our kids either grown or independent. We looked sharp, and we still had our hair well, except for Ronnie, our drummer. We hit the ground running, and our loyal fans emerged from hibernation, eager to pay cover charges and pack the venues each night. Whenever my sons were free, they would swing by to help with the renovations and sometimes even jam with the band. I made sure they knew not to share anything with their mum about me unless she asked directly. They simply told her that I had been upset at first, but was now moving forward and doing well. My daughter, who lived in Australia with her fiancé, got the same instructions. I trusted my kids completely to respect my wishes, and I knew they were being truthful when they said Ellen was kept in the dark about my current state. To fend off loneliness, I focused on building healthy habits. I revamped my diet and ramped up my workouts. I had never let myself fall out of shape, but now I attacked the pool with new vigor and took to running and biking with fresh determination. Every evening before heading to a gig, I would hit the weights, alternating between leg days and upper body workouts. Within a month of Ellen leaving, I had rebuilt not only my home but also my social circle, daily routine, bond with my children, and even my physical health. It felt only right to respond to her letter, as she had started the conversation, hadn't she? Dear Ellen, thank you. You were right. Goodbye. Jeff. That was the entirety of my email to her, short and direct. It said all I needed to say. I didn't bother tracking down a new address, and honestly, I didn't want to. There were rumors about her, whispers of a younger man with a flashy car and a slick charm. People had spotted them together at beach clubs and parties. Anytime someone tried to tell me more about her life, I politely declined to listen. Among our mutual friends, bits and pieces formed a story of a whirlwind romance, running from September to June, or maybe it was October to June, or even November to May, but none of it mattered to me. I truly wished her well. Grandpa's rule of 3 days for grieving had seen me through, and I was content with who I had become. I was too in love with my current self to dwell on the past. As summer began to wind down, I felt the usual bittersweet feelings that come with teaching, but August was filled with music. Buddy and I were booked for one festival after another straight through September. Labor Day weekend had us performing 2 to 3 times a day, keeping me so busy I didn't even check Ellen's email response. It wasn't an intentional snub, I just figured our exchange was meant to be brief, a way to close things off, just like she had wanted. I was too caught up in the whirlwind of activities and having too much fun to even think about checking my email. In fact, I had nearly forgotten about the troubles in my marriage until Sam called with news that our divorce had been fast-tracked. Apparently, a clerk with connections to a family court judge happened to be a fan of our band, so my divorce would be official by Friday. After a month and a half of life-altering experiences, Friday would mark the return of my single status. We were scheduled to perform at an arts festival and street fair in town, and suddenly, all those women with short skirts and plunging necklines were in play. The street was packed when we hit the stage. We cranked up the amps and unleashed our hard-hitting blues sound. We played covers, original songs, and even improvised tunes, getting the crowd hyped and dancing. It was electrifying. The guys had dug into our archives and pulled out our old master recordings from back in the day. We never got around to making an album before life got in the way, but now we had enough material to fill a couple of makeshift CDs, which were much easier to produce than vinyl. They flew off the sales table as fast as we could stock them. I caught the attention of women of all ages, signaling that I was more than ready to end my dry spell. In the midst of all the excitement, I didn't notice Ellen trying to slip backstage. As I slung my guitar onto the back of my bike, which I had modified years ago to carry my instrument, I missed her rushing toward me. I also didn't see the look of heartbreak on her face when she saw another woman, Michelle, a striking blonde in her 30s, swing her leg over the bike to sit behind me. It was the first time in the 25 years of owning that bike that anyone other than me had sat on it. I didn't see the tear that formed in Ellen's eye as I rode off. I wish I had. Michelle was amazing. I won't go into the explicit details of what happened between us, but let's just say I pursued her with the enthusiasm of a teenager and reached levels of fulfillment I hadn't experienced in a long time. By the end of the night, she thanked me for the time we spent together, but hinted I shouldn't call her again. Perhaps she anticipated the recovery time I'd need after such an encounter. I knew I couldn't avoid Ellen forever, and I didn't. The next time I saw her was at our usual Friday night gig at Jimmy's. She walked in with her new companion and another couple. They grabbed a table and ordered drinks. The moment I spotted her, I signaled the band that we were changing the setlist. We had a tradition of playing American Woman whenever one of us saw an ex-girlfriend in the crowd, and the wrong guy would always take the mic. It was our way of standing together in solidarity, and we held a firm belief that dating a friend's ex was forbidden. We never crossed that line. I started playing the guitar riff in the slower, soulful style of Lenny Kravitz's cover of the song. This time I found myself enjoying American Woman more than ever, pouring all my emotion into the lyrics. The guitar solos resonated with the crowd, and their energy spiked. I didn't see Ellen's immediate reaction, but later, Buddy's wife told me she saw tears well up in Ellen's eyes when I sang lines like, "Stay away from me and go on and let me be." Ellen left before the song was over, barely keeping herself together. Her companion and friends, however, stayed behind, continuing to drink and dance well into the night. It was clear things weren't going so well in her new relationship. A week later, my older son came to visit with some interesting news. Apparently, Ellen and her new guy had broken up that same night. He had grown tired of her, while she struggled to keep up with his high-energy lifestyle, both physically and otherwise. He was also upset that Ellen avoided venues where we performed, as word spread that the band was back in action and drawing big crowds. Additionally, he wasn't happy when he found out Ellen had given up her claim to the house in the divorce, planning to move back into my place. I had suspected him of being a gold digger, but his boldness surprised me. He probably didn't know about the prenuptial agreement Ellen's father had insisted on, which stated that if either of us left for someone else, they forfeited all rights to family assets. I had agreed to it without hesitation, never intending to hurt Ellen. After her breakup, Ellen spent the night crying to the kids over the phone. I sympathized with her, but I had already gone through my own 3 days of grieving. By this point, I could offer support without any emotional baggage. However, the kids weren't happy with my detached approach. They still saw me as emotionally unattached and thought I should let their mum stay at the family home temporarily until she got back on her feet. I disagreed. Letting her move back in would mean dealing with her mood swings, which I had already navigated during our marriage, along with the added complications of rejection from her boy toy, the shame of returning to me, and the guilt over leaving in the first place. I wasn't ready to take all that on again. I was enjoying my newfound freedom and independence too much. As the weeks passed, the kids lowered their expectations and asked for more reasonable help. I granted them access to the storage unit where I had kept valuable furniture and belongings that were too precious to discard. I even lent them the band's truck to help with the move once Ellen found a place. With the new school year in full swing and the band's packed schedule, I rarely ran into Ellen. Though we worked in the same district, we were in different buildings, so our interactions were minimal. When we did cross paths, I barely noticed her. I had become a hot topic at school, maybe due to my frequent arrivals on the Harley or in my sports car, or perhaps it was my renewed energy spilling into my professional life. I didn't care much about the rumors. The band was thriving, my barbecue parties were famous for being fun, and I was never lacking female company. I was happy and didn't miss married life at all. Flying to France for Thanksgiving had always been a dream of mine, and this year everything fell into place. The night before my trip, my son called to invite me to Thanksgiving dinner with Ellen. He was upset when I explained that I already had plans, but he quickly suggested that we have a family Christmas instead. He and his girlfriend offered to handle the cooking if I hosted. He mentioned that all 3 kids would be in town and said they were eager to share a special day together. I agreed on the condition that Ellen wouldn't bring a date and that my focus would remain entirely on the kids. I was a bit surprised when my son mentioned that Ellen wasn't seeing anyone and was actually feeling quite lonely. Even so, I didn't inquire further about her personal life, as my priority was making sure the family gathering went off smoothly without any awkward moments. I offered for the kids to stay at my place for as long as they wanted, thinking it would be better than them staying at a hotel. My son was concerned that Ellen might feel out of place if she had to leave while everyone else stayed. After giving it some thought, I realized this would be the first time in a long while that our entire family would be together since the kids had moved out. I acknowledged that Ellen was part of that family too, so I told my son to extend the invitation for her to stay as well. She can stay in the guest room, I added, but it's not a good idea for her to stay in her old room. If you bring guests, they'll need to stay in your room or find other arrangements. Thanks, Dad. This really means a lot to us, my son replied with appreciation. That year, Christmas fell on a Saturday, but the celebrations began Thursday evening as everyone arrived. My daughter and her fiancé flew in from Australia, and my son and his girlfriend drove from Boston, picking up my youngest, who was attending college there. Ellen showed up about 10 minutes before them. I watched her sit in her car, looking nervous as she saw everyone gathering in the front yard, hugging and laughing. A wave of nostalgia hit me for the first time since I had moved past my 3 days of mourning. As the 6 of them walked through the front door, they were welcomed into a warm and festive atmosphere. It occurred to me that neither my daughter nor my ex-wife had been in the house since I had remodeled it, so there was an element of surprise for them. However, I had decorated the house with the same Christmas traditions we had enjoyed for years. Candles, nutcrackers, and centerpieces filled the room, though now on my new furniture. The Christmas tree, covered with old ornaments from vacations and handmade crafts from the kids, stood proudly in its usual place. I had added a fireplace during the renovation, and its glow created a cozy holiday ambience. The smell of pine, the crackling fire, and mulled cider filled the air. The cookies and fudge covered every available surface, and the dining table was set with the fine china passed down from Ellen's grandmother, a wedding gift from long ago. Though the house had become truly my own, it was still more than ready to host Christmas for my family. Despite everything that had happened, they were still my family. The kids, though grown, were my flesh and blood, and despite the divorce, Ellen had held a significant place in my heart for most of my adult life. There was a buzz of excitement as they explored the house. I had restored the kids' bedrooms to almost exactly how they remembered them, with a few updates like toning down the hot pink in my daughter's room to a softer pastel. I had replaced their single beds with more comfortable queen-sized ones, but their childhood desks and dressers remained, only the headboards had been updated. The guest room had been transformed into a studio with a drafting table by the window for painting and enough space for musical instruments, amps, and recording equipment. I had also expanded one side of the ground floor, turning a small library into a spacious room complete with a TV and a pool table. The living room was centered around the new fireplace, decorated with new Christmas stockings for each of us, including one for Ellen. Seeing the stockings immediately brought back a flood of childhood memories for the kids. With grins, they rushed to their stockings, and in that moment, they seemed like carefree children again, diving into the holiday excitement. The older two, with a bit more maturity, also grabbed their partner's stockings, reminiscing about the tradition of stuffing them with small gifts and treats before moving on to the bigger presents under the tree. Soon the house was filled with laughter, the sound of tearing wrapping paper, and the delicious smell of cookies and chocolates. They donned silly novelty socks and basked in the joy of Christmas morning. "Dad, your stocking is empty. We didn't bring anything to fill it," they exclaimed, pulling my stocking from the mantel. I looked inside and replied, "No, my dears, you have filled it. You're all here, laughing, reminiscing, and enjoying each other's company. That's what fills my stocking, the spirit of Christmas." With hugs and kisses, we wished each other a Merry Christmas. Ellen held on to our embrace a bit longer than expected, but it felt natural. For a brief moment, it was as if we were still one big, happy family. As the kids noticed there were still presents under the tree, the excitement of Christmas past returned. Gifts were exchanged, a feast was enjoyed, and after the dishes were cleared, the guitars came out for our traditional Christmas jam session. As the night wound down, everyone began heading to their respective rooms. Ellen made her way to the hallway closet to grab her coat. "Thank you for being so kind to me today. I really appreciated spending Christmas with you and the kids. I know it's my fault, but of all the things I gave up, I miss the family moments the most." "Well, the kids are grown and on their own now. Even if we were still together, this kind of gathering would be rare," I said, acknowledging the bittersweet truth of our situation. "I understand, but I also miss the quality time we used to have, just the two of us. I guess I'm finally apologizing to you. I really messed up what could have been a great life for both of us." "Don't be too hard on yourself," I replied. "We always encourage the kids to chase their dreams and find happiness. You did the same. We still have fulfilling lives. They're just different." She looked at me in disbelief. "So you're telling me you don't value what we had? After today, you feel no nostalgia or regret for what we've lost?" "Ellen, we had a beautiful day today. What exactly do you think we've lost?" "We lost each other. I lost you, and I'll never forgive myself for that. And it seems like you couldn't care less," she said, tears streaming down her face. I wrapped an arm around her as she broke down. I had already grieved when she first left, but seeing her like this on Christmas Day stirred some sadness within me. Once she calmed down, I reminded her of our college days, when she ended things because she feared we were getting too serious too fast. She had needed space to figure out if she truly wanted a lifelong commitment with one person. I recounted how heartbroken I had been when she left, but told her I couldn't be with someone who wasn't fully committed. I explained how I had allowed myself a mourning period after our marriage ended and had come out of it ready to embrace life again. I told her that, even now, she remained an important part of my life, and I was grateful for that. My composure seemed to help soothe her tears. I asked her to stay the night, made up the bed in the studio, and gave her one of my t-shirts and a robe. After locking up the house, I heard her quietly sobbing as I returned upstairs, though I doubted she would sleep. Nonetheless, I slept soundly. The next day felt like an extension of Christmas, and I was thrilled when the kids encouraged Ellen to stay through the weekend. We avoided discussing our past in front of the kids. but I noticed familiar looks in Ellen's eyes, those "I love you so much" smiles from when we were married. I even responded to a few silent requests for hugs and kisses. It felt like we understood each other again, just as we had during our marriage. At meals, she poured my coffee, and I added just the right amount of milk. I buttered my pancakes, and she spread the perfect amount of syrup. We finished each other's sentences. After the kids left my daughter off to Boston with the boys, then to Vermont for skiing, Ellen and I were alone in the house we now co-owned. I tended the fire while she opened a bottle of wine. We sat and talked, reminiscing and laughing before transitioning to more serious topics. I acted foolishly, and I was wrong, she began softly, full of regret. I understand I can never fully make amends, and I don't expect your forgiveness, but I do want to apologize. I hope we can at least be friends again. You weren't just my husband, you were my best friend, my confidant, my partner in mischief. I miss everything about you. I smiled, and it seemed to unlock the floodgates. Ellen spoke with eloquence, explaining how she had grown bored and how, in hindsight, she realized she had pushed me away, creating the passionless void we both suffered through. She described the thrill of meeting a younger man, the temptation of an affair, and how she had vilified me to justify her actions, painting me as the problem when, in reality, she was acting destructively. She revealed how the excitement of betrayal mixed with resentment that I hadn't fought for her, that I had let her go without a fight. She admitted she felt envious of my life after I bounced back, especially when she saw another woman riding on the back of my Harley. Her jealousy had grown into anger as she witnessed me with different women, each offering something she felt was better than what she had given me. After the divorce, her emotional state worsened, especially when she discovered that her younger lover had a pattern of dating married women, only to discard them once they were single. He enjoyed spending their ex-husband's money, particularly after his traditionalist father cut him off from his trust fund due to disapproving of the affair. Following the breakup, Ellen struggled to find another serious partner. The eligible men her age were either already taken or unwilling to commit to a woman who had cheated on her loyal first husband. She found no shortage of men willing to buy her drinks, dance with her, or spend the night, but nothing lasting came from it. Younger men were happy to date her, as she still maintained her looks, but they weren't interested in a long-term relationship, especially considering the challenges of starting a family with someone going through menopause. I listened as she vented until she finally exhausted her words. I poured us both another glass of wine, handing her one with a smile. "From what you've told me, it sounds like you made some mistakes, but you don't owe me anything," I said. "As I told you before, you followed your desires, and I loved you enough to let you go." Her expression shifted, clearly surprised by my response. It was evident she hadn't expected me to frame my words around love. "I forgave you almost immediately," I continued. "How could I hold you in a marriage when you wanted out? I couldn't keep you tied down. If I had tried to stop you, you would have just hidden it from me and gone on with your choices anyway. Your letter, though harsh at first, actually simplified things for us. We avoided property disputes. And with the kids being grown, we didn't have to deal with custody battles. In a way, I should thank you for that." I paused before concluding, "I'm no longer your husband, and it might take time for you to consider me your best friend or confidant again. Trust is an issue, and that takes time. But if you're willing to trust me enough to take my advice, that title is yours to decide. Partner in mischief might be a bit too romantic for where we are now, but we can at least start by calling ourselves friends." Tears welled up in her eyes as she melted into my arms. She chose to stay another night, but let's be clear, nothing happened. We slept separately, with plenty to catch up on. It seemed we had fallen back into our comfortable roles as co-parents. The following day, she went home to get ready for a New Year's trip to meet the kids in Boston, while I had a busy schedule of gigs lined up for the week. It's a hectic time for musicians, and my attention was entirely on my work, so 12/31/19 Ellen hardly crossed my mind. The next time we ran into each other was at an in-service conference in April. We ended up sitting next to each other and sharing a table at lunch. Our conversation was pleasant, mostly centered around our daughter's upcoming wedding in Australia. It felt as though we were slowly returning to a comfortable friendship. At the end of the meal, Ellen thanked me for how kind I had been, both that day and at Christmas. She seemed genuinely happy that we could move forward as friends. Then, blushing slightly and hesitating, she stammered out a request. She wanted to go for a ride on the Harley one Saturday. I responded enthusiastically, suggesting Sunday, which was forecasted to be warm and sunny, with no other plans on my schedule. I proposed we head north, enjoy the fresh air, and stop for lunch along the way. She was cheerful and animated, and it brought back memories of her riding with me back in our younger days. Back then, our rides always ended with us feeling closer, but I knew things were different now. We rode up to the falls, and as we hiked the trails, I couldn't help but think of the carefree times we once shared. We stopped in a quaint town to browse through the shops, something I wouldn't normally enjoy, but with her, it felt special. Lunch was lovely, and by evening we were back in the south, stopping at a charming seafood dock for a candlelit meal. The atmosphere was peaceful, with the gentle sound of water lapping against the dock. When we returned to my house, which had once been our home, the connection between us was undeniable. We ended up in bed together, sharing a moment that felt like a rekindling of something old. After that night, we continued to see each other. The following week, we went out for dinner and a movie, and yes, we were intimate again. We even had lunch together a few times. However, we never discussed where our relationship was going, and neither of us brought up exclusivity. With our daughter's wedding fast approaching, we were both preoccupied. I had gone over all the details and was proud to cover the expenses without a fuss. The band was doing well, and we had paid off the mortgage before our divorce. While I wasn't wealthy, I was comfortable, with savings in the bank. The only thing we hadn't coordinated were our travel plans for the wedding. We had each made separate arrangements, but as it turned out, we were both staying at the same hotel where the wedding guests would gather. When we compared notes, we discovered that we were booked on the same flight. I suggested she come to my house so we could share the car I had hired to take us to the airport. On the day of the trip, Ellen arrived earlier than expected, and I had barely finished tidying up when the car pulled into the driveway. The driver took us to JFK, and after checking in our bags, we made our way to the terminal. Since there were few direct flights from JFK to Sydney that day, the check-in counters weren't busy. After Ellen went through, the attendant asked why I hadn't used the shorter line for first-class passengers. Although I had bought a first-class ticket due to the long flight, I wasn't accustomed to the perks. The agent found it amusing and directed me to the first-class lounge. Ellen was waiting for me, and we passed through security together before heading to the lounge. The attendant didn't question Ellen's entry with a coach ticket, but kindly offered to upgrade her to first class so we could sit together. Call me sentimental, but the thought of flying halfway across the world with the mother of my daughter, while she was cramped in coach with no legroom, didn't sit right with me. As we were about to board the plane, I made her wait with me. Initially, she was annoyed, worried about losing her seat to a standby passenger, but I reassured her that I had already checked her in when we arrived at the lounge. Her frustration faded quickly when she realized she was seated next to me in first class. I explained, it's for the mother of the bride. Her mood shifted so much that I momentarily entertained the idea of joining the Mile High Club, but let's be real, public displays of affection, especially in an airplane lavatory, are not my style. We landed in Sydney, and the week was magical. We toured the city, visited all the sights, and best of all, witnessed our daughter begin her own marriage journey. I can't describe the pride I felt when I said my one line, her mother and I do, after walking her down the aisle. At the reception, I escorted Ellen and cherished the traditional dances. One of the highlights was when her brothers and I joined the band for a lively rendition of All American Girl, a musical tribute to our little girl. After the wedding, Ellen, the boys, and I gathered in the hotel lounge. One of my sons cut straight to the point, "So what's going on with you two?" "Nothing new," sweetie, Ellen replied. "Your dad and I are just embracing our roles as your parents. We've moved past the past and are enjoying life. Is that okay with you?" "Yeah, Mum, but it feels like more than that. It seems like you're getting close again, maybe even, I don't know, getting back together." "Honey, I'm not oblivious," she responded. "I had a moment of madness a while back and made a foolish mistake. I own up to that and accept the consequences. Your dad and I have talked it through, like we always taught you. I made a decision, ended the relationship, and I accept the outcome." The boys turned to me for my perspective. I smiled, taking a sip of the local Australian ale I was enjoying. "Come on, Dad," Mum answered the question. "Do we get to hear from you?" "You boys should just be thankful we didn't spend the week throwing insults at each other," I said. "I hear that's what most divorced couples do at these kinds of events. Beyond that, I believe your question touches on my romantic life, which, as I've taught you, is off limits. Didn't I tell you not to kiss and tell? So why would I start now? But Dad, you love Mum. It's obvious to all of us. We're both old enough to know what it means when a girl says she just wants to be friends. So, without giving me unpleasant images of your love life, just tell us, are you and Mum just friends? Son, given our past, if we're friendly, it will always be more than simple friendship. She's the love of my life, the mother of my kids, and the best friend I've ever had. You can't just switch that on or off. Beyond that, I can't say much because that part of our story hasn't been written yet. We chatted a little longer before heading to our rooms. I had just slipped into my pajamas when there was a knock on my door. It was Ellen. I invited her in, and we climbed into bed together platonically. She began thanking me for everything: the first-class upgrade, the wonderful week we'd had, working together as a team for our daughter's wedding, and for what I'd told the boys in the lounge. I was exhausted by her stream of gratitude and could hardly keep up. She stayed for breakfast, which I ordered through room service, and the trip home felt like a dream. When we arrived at my house, Ellen gave me a deep kiss before leaving. I want you to know I'm here for you whenever and for whatever you need. Somewhere along the line, I forgot why I loved you. In the everyday routine of being an adult, I lost sight of how much I loved you. Leaving you was the worst mistake I could have made. And hurting you is my greatest regret. If you need anything, whether it's a tennis partner, backup singer, or lover, I'm here. Need someone to cook a meal, fold laundry, or wash dishes? I'll do it. I won't ask for or expect exclusivity, but if you ever want that, the answer is yes. Friend. Girlfriend, mistress, lover, wife, just say the word. That's really sweet of you, Ellen. I'm glad we've reconnected, but I'm not ready to put labels on us. I don't know where we're headed, but I'm happy we're sharing this journey, at least for now. I've spent my whole life living with women, first my mum and sister, then marrying you right after college. I'm enjoying having my own space, choosing the colors, and deciding the level of clutter. I like cooking for myself, having the fridge stocked with my favorites, and playing in the band. I have to admit, having an open love life has been good for me. And I'm not planning to change that anytime soon. Do you remember the note I wrote in response to your letter? Yes, you said I was right, thanked me, and said goodbye. You didn't even sign it with love. I meant every word in that note. You were right, we were stuck and needed a change. The thank you and goodbye were sincere. Adding love would have felt dishonest and out of place. Anything else I could have written would have either come across as bitter or made me seem like I was begging. And I'm not good at that. So, I wrote what needed to be said and left it there. Well, what needs to be said now, Tom? Nothing. I've shown you everything you need to know. Yes, you have. You've shown me that you still care, that you still find me attractive, and that you want me. You've stood by me with the kids. You've shown me that you love me more than just a casual lover. Would you share dinner, breakfast, and upgraded me to first class without asking for anything in return. You declared to our sons that I'm the love of your life. The only thing missing is a permanent role being your wife. I know I gave that up, and I'll never push you on it, but if you ever ask, my answer will be yes. With that, she kissed me goodnight. Sure, I thought about what she said, but let's be realistic. Why settle for just one? I had everything I wanted: my own home, grown kids, financial security, an ex-wife determined to win me back, and a fit body with all my hair still intact. Not to mention, the band was successful. I had a Harley, and there was a steady stream of women eager to ride on the back. I loved Ellen, and the thought of sharing my later years with someone was nice, but maybe I'd reconsider when I hit 60. For now, I wasn't ready. I hadn't written a Dear Jeff letter, so I didn't feel responsible for any consequences. I had forgiven her, made my peace, and my life was in order. So, I dialed the number of the blonde who had hopped on my Harley after the street festival. She giggled when I asked if she was serious about not wanting to hear from me again, assuring me she was fine and up for a rendezvous. She invited me over, and as I revved up my Harley to head to her place, I knew I'd propose to Ellen someday, but that day wasn't today. Wasn't today. Story 2. Oh. I gradually grew fond of her. The best part was that we were both single, and I was open to seeing where things might go. Since my teenage years, I had always admired intelligent girls who could blow me away with their smarts. I thought my prayers had been answered when I met my ex-wife, but I was wrong. We were friends for 7 months before I asked her out. I didn't want to wait any longer, fearing someone else might sweep her away. From the first month we started dating, I felt like we were made for each other. As our relationship deepened, she influenced me in so many ways, and my life changed significantly. We were the perfect couple, and every day I thank God for bringing her into my life. When we met, I wasn't earning much, but I did my best to treat her to gifts, even if they weren't expensive. I got her books on business and marketing, including one that was all over the ads at the time. About 2 years into our relationship, she caught her lucky break and was hired as a business consultant for a top company in our country, and things started to improve for both of us. I was working as a marketer and tried my best to close big deals. Within the first 2 years of dating my ex-wife, I was able to close deals I hadn't been able to in the 4 years before we met. Although it wasn't a huge amount of money, it was a stepping stone for me. Shortly after, things started to fall into place for us. I became better at marketing, convincing clients, and closing deals. She grew as well. After 3 years of dating, we got married, and our lives continued to improve. Before tying the knot, we had agreed not to have children until we reached a certain financial goal, and we stayed committed to that plan. We were driven by early successes, and I believed that, just like successful people before us, we could achieve great things too. For the first 3 years of our marriage, we worked tirelessly, often sacrificing sleep, brainstorming ideas, and launching a business together. We gave up many comforts to pursue our goals. The only luxuries we indulged in were good food and the apartment we lived in. We drove a 2005 car and reinvested every penny we earned back into the business. Fortunately, in the 4th year of our marriage, we had our breakthrough sales soared, and even top companies knew about us. That year, we decided to go on vacation, our first real trip since our modest honeymoon. I was overjoyed because my dreams were becoming a reality. We had moved into a bigger, more comfortable apartment, and our business was thriving. We had expanded our remote team, and everything was running smoothly, even when we weren't around. The money was flowing in steadily, and I was happy that my ex-wife and I could finally live the life we had envisioned. I had high hopes for the vacation. It would be a time to reconnect, rekindle our love, and enjoy each other's company. But it opened my eyes to a painful truth that I still can't get over. During the trip, my ex-wife stayed connected to her yoga classes online. She never missed a day, whether she was feeling well or not. On the 3rd day of our trip, after a morning out, we returned to our apartment to rest. She said she wanted to go for a walk and asked if I wanted to join her, but I was still sleepy, so I stayed behind. Unfortunately, after she left, I couldn't fall back asleep and couldn't reach her because she hadn't taken her phone with her. Feeling bored, I decided to play a game on her tablet. I avoided using my own phone, fearing I'd get sucked into work or start chatting with my team. As soon as I started the game, a notification popped up from her yoga instructor. The last message he sent her read, "I love you," with heart emojis at the end. I found it strange. At first I thought her instructor was just being friendly, but a part of me wanted to know more. I clicked on the message, and it opened their full WhatsApp conversation. What I saw broke my heart. There were messages going back a year, filled with voice notes, explicit texts, and inappropriate jokes about other members of the yoga class. They even exchanged nude photos and talked dirty to each other. I was in disbelief that my ex-wife had been cheating on me with her yoga instructor and had been doing it so effortlessly. We were so consumed with work and our phones that I never suspected anything. I discovered that they regularly met at hotels to be intimate, recording videos of themselves together, both in bed and in the bathroom. That day I realized that my ex-wife wasn't just obsessed with yoga, she was obsessed with her yoga instructor. She repeatedly told him she adored him and made comments that she had never said to me. In her messages, she called him her spiritual guide and said he had opened her eyes to some kind of higher truth. Reading all of that, seeing the pictures and videos of them together, tore me apart. Even if someone had warned me or I had heard it from a psychic, I wouldn't have believed it. I trusted her completely and wanted nothing more than to spend my life with her. After I'd seen enough, I forwarded all the messages, photos, and videos to my phone and erased any sign that I had touched hers. I went back to bed before she returned, but she could tell something was wrong. She kept asking what was bothering me, and I lied, telling her I had lost a huge deal and was feeling terrible about it. I faked being sick 2 days later, and we cut the vacation short. Once we were back, I knew she wouldn't miss her next yoga class, and she didn't. An hour after she left for her session, I surprised her by showing up at the studio. I asked if I could play something on the big screen for everyone to see, and her instructor, unaware, agreed right away. The first video started playing, and the room was filled with gasps as everyone turned to stare at my ex-wife and the instructor. I watched as my ex-wife stood there, confused, with tears welling up in her eyes. She tried to walk over to me, but ended up running out of the room, humiliated. The yoga instructor tried to hide in shame, but I played the rest of the recordings for the class to hear. It was a disaster. When I got home, I found that she had moved some of her belongings out of our bedroom and left a simple note that read, "I'm sorry that was the end for us. We divorced soon after and split everything we had made from the business." As for the yoga instructor, he was fired, and neither he nor my ex-wife ever returned to that studio again. I knew I could survive without her, but despite everything we had built together, I still hate her for what she did. She didn't even have the decency to face me and apologize. She just left a note. We haven't spoken since then, and it's been 2 years. I'm still struggling to move on. This story highlights the deep hurt and sense of betrayal caused by a spouse's infidelity. The protagonist invested heavily in the relationship and had dreams of a shared future, but his trust was shattered. While his reaction to the betrayal is understandable, revenge rarely leads to true healing. It's essential to learn from such experiences and strive for honesty, openness, and communication in relationships.